Okay, so here's what we do for the example. He's a 78-year-old male. We're going to change it from Code Finder to DRG Finder. We'll click Continue. We're going to discharge him home. The admitting diagnosis is the fatigue. Type in that as a main term. Select it under number 4. It is unspecified because it's an admitting diagnosis. It is not the principal diagnosis. And we have the R5383. Now we're going to add another diagnosis. We're going to add the heart failure, the acute on chronic, so it's failure. What type of failure? It's heart. It is congestive. It has reduced or mid-range ejection fraction. That's what acute on chronic is. And we're just going to have it as already coded. And it's going to repeat, so it's already coded. There were no procedures. Note that we get I53.23, acute on chronic systolic heart failure, just like the example on Moodle. Now we're going to add another diagnosis. We're going to add the type 2 diabetes. Click Add Diagnosis. Click Diabetes. Diabetic diabetes, just like in the alphabetic index. And it's type 2. No complications are mentioned. Already coded. Whoops. I need to go back. My bad. No complications because it's managed and they did specify that. So it's the E11.9, just like it is on the example. Now we're going to add the hypertension. We're going to add hypertension. With heart and kidney involvement. It's congestive. There was no renal failure, so mentioned, so other/unspecified. Heart failure was already coded, so we're going to select that. There was no mention of resistant hypertension, already coded, no procedures. Now we have the I-10. Now to group it, we're going to hit continue and watch what happens. Note that just like on your example, we have DRG 293. Category is diseases, disorders of the circulatory system. Heart failure. The weight. The admit diagnosis. The principal. And everything, the estimated reimbursement. Now what you can do is do the second part. If you're looking at the example again, they want you to add ventricular tachycardia as a secondary diagnosis. Let's do that and see how the DRG changes. Okay, so we have I4720. Now we hit continue to group it, and you can see how the DRG changes. So now we're going to go ahead and we can remove the diagnosis and add the other ones per the example. I hope you find this useful. Please reach out with any questions. Bye now.